Hi everyone, and welcome to Remaking Tomorrow, a series of conversations about the future of teaching and learning. I'm Ryan Rydzeski, here with Greg Baer, and we're the co-authors of When You Wonder, You're Learning, Mr. Rogers' enduring lessons for raising creative, curious, caring kids.
This is a podcast powered by Remake Learning, a network that ignites engaging, relevant, and equitable learning in support of young people navigating rapid social and technological change.
On today's episode, we're talking with William Hite, President and CEO of KnowledgeWorks, a national nonprofit that works with schools, states, and other partners to spark new thinking about ways to prepare today's learners for an uncertain future. A longtime educator, Dr. Hite previously served as superintendent of the School District of Philadelphia, the largest public school system in Pennsylvania. Before that, he was superintendent of Prince George's County Public Schools in Maryland. He's been a principal, a college professor, and an executive fellow at Yale, and one Philadelphia official called him, quote, the finest public-facing superintendent that I've ever seen. Bill, welcome to Remaking Tomorrow.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Dr. Hite, we are excited to have you here, and the organization you lead, KnowledgeWorks, is in many ways the perfect subject for a show like this one. The entire organization is focused on the future of learning, specifically one in which students of all races, ethnicities, incomes, and identities pursue learning that helps them uncover their passions and thrive. So let's start there. How exactly does KnowledgeWorks peer into the future? What does it take to do such a thing?
Yeah, so we are an organization that really now is, in addition to what you just shared, really focused on accelerating the transformation of the national learning system. And we want to accelerate that transformation to a system that is more responsive and more equitable for all learners to discover their passions and be prepared to thrive in the future. And so what we're trying to do is do that work through 3 to 5 proof point geographies and thought leadership. And that thought leadership is really getting with other partners who are engaged in this type of work to ensure that we are shining a light on what personalized and competency-based learning implementation looks like and what it can achieve, especially for young people.
So you obviously bring lots of experience to the role, not only as an educator and as a school leader, but also as a parent and grandparent. And you've told a story that lots of us, unfortunately, can probably relate to. This happened when your grandson was 6 years old. He was really excited about the tall buildings in Philadelphia where you live, and he told you he wanted to go build buildings himself, which is an exciting aspiration. And when you told him it all starts with school, his response, I think, was pretty familiar. He said, oh man, it starts with boring school? First of all, why is that the experience? Why is that the first response of so many kids?
I mean, it becomes the first response. And at the time, I had the responsibility of educating 130,000 young people in the school district of Philadelphia. And I was always focused on how do we make learning as engaging as possible to inspire young people to pursue passions, which is really a deeper cause than just the compulsory laws that require them to be in school. But the thing that hit me when he shared that is that I'm doing this work on behalf of the 130 plus thousand children that we have in the school district of Philadelphia, and my own grandson leaving kindergarten is disenchanted with school. And I think a lot of that happens now because we've become so focused on a time-based system that requires young people to be in a place a certain amount of time, spend a certain amount of hours, and then after a certain number of years, then they reach this thing that is called graduation and they leave the system. Now, the challenge with that is that learning becomes very much the variable. We don't actually know if a child has learned something to mastery. We actually don't know what a child's passion is because we've been so busy focused on that system that we're going to be evaluated against, we're going to be judged against in terms of whatever the measure is, what we call standards that quite frankly can be perceived in multiple ways, but then those things are assessed, and unfortunately whatever that assessment is become the thing that is most important to the educator. Unfortunately, that's not intentional. That is just the system that we have constructed. So everything that my grandson was interested in, he's being told to put that away because it doesn't fit within like the construct of what's going to be assessed in kindergarten or in first grade, or what's going to be measured. And therefore, he then has to put that passion on the back burner. And so for him, even as a kindergartner, school became then less relevant to that thing that he wanted to accomplish. And I think that happens with too many of our young people in schools today.
In the world that you're working to construct for our kids, in your preferred future of learning, what might your grandson's schooling look like? What kind of things might he be doing that would put him on the path to building buildings or anything else that excites him?
First and foremost, understanding what his passion may be, having the practice of engaging in a learning experience that actually allows him to think about a problem that he has to solve, understanding that his demonstration of mastery could be in multiple ways, giving him a problem and allowing him to solve that problem or at least learn more about that problem. And I think that could be done in multiple ways. The restructuring of time for young people, making it a project that a student is engaged in that both meets whatever the standard or competency is, but also it's responsive to what the learner's interests may be. Allowing that young person to work through the challenges of that project. And if that thing doesn't go well, also wanting the young person or my grandson to understand, why did it not go well? What went wrong here? How do I know it was wrong? And what can I do to actually correct that? And giving them multiple opportunities to achieve mastery. And when they don't achieve it, ensuring that we're providing them with the support structures and the opportunities to do that thing over in a better and different way.
So much of what you just described, Bill, could be summed up as personalized, competency-based learning, which, as Greg just mentioned, is exactly what KnowledgeWorks sets out to support. Can you talk a little bit about how does KnowledgeWorks go about making that kind of learning a reality? I know that you work with lots of different people, lots of different organizations, lots of different partners. Can you talk about what that work looks like when KnowledgeWorks partners with a state or a school system?
It looks like the following, and it could be several entry points. And one entry point could be at the policy level and whether or not the policies are conducive to the types of things that I just described: state policies, federal policy, district policies, or at the very least, guidelines. In many cases, we create lots of rules to ensure that children are where we want them to be and learners are doing the things we want them to do. And in many cases, those rules prevent us from working outside of the traditional approach. It could be KnowledgeWorks in schools, where we have individuals who come in and work directly with instructional coaches or curriculum leads or principals or district staff that allows them to understand what personalized competency-based education is and what are some characteristics of that approach. I would add here that we use Aurora's definition of personalized competency-based learning, which provides, I think, 7 characteristics of that. And they're everything from student agency to mastery to engagement. And so that's still another way that KnowledgeWorks can do that work. And we can develop staff, or we can work with those individuals who are responsible for the development of said staff. In addition, we have what's called a foresight team. They do a great job of like predicting things that are evident in the future, right? And things like several years ago, predicting a pandemic or predicting artificial intelligence. And so we have a forecasting team that actually could help individuals think through what they actually should begin preparing for in terms of creating a learner-centered environment. And then we have a research and impact and improvement arm that looks at evidence of, is the approach making a difference in terms of the level of engagement of a young person, attendance of that person, and whether or not that young person is reaching mastery of, let's say, a graduate profile in a way that is also conducive with the types of things that we want that young person to experience. And so those are the ways in which we work with educators and or systems and or states and or partners to promote and to implement personalized and competency-based learning.
And Bill, Ryan and I have heard you talk too about the importance of prioritizing joy. Joy is something that gets lost in conversations about systems and about futures. So why prioritize joy, and what does doing so look like?
I was guilty of this as a superintendent and thinking about all of the metrics on which I was judged and the district was judged. But then when I talked to a young person in the school district, let's say the school district of Philadelphia, the thing that motivated that young person had nothing to do with those measures that I was concerned about, that I was being evaluated on. The things that those young people were talking about were things like, do I feel valued? Do I feel welcome? Is it fun? Are there things that are interesting to me? Can I pursue my passion? Do I have the opportunity to engage in extracurricular opportunities? Are there opportunities to consider my voice? Those were the things that I heard from my students, and those things that were really important. And so this notion of joy is not forgetting all of the things that keep young people engaged in the learning process. And, oh, by the way, we just don't want them learning while they're with us. We want them learning for the rest of their lives. This notion of joy also helps promote what I call the metacognition of continuous learning, ensuring that a young person becomes inquisitive, becomes a problem solver, becomes a collaborator, becomes an analyst of information, a part of what creates that joy for learners.
This is Greg Baer, along with Ryan Rudzeski, and we're talking with Dr. Bill Hite, President and CEO of KnowledgeWorks. Bill, when you were superintendent of the Philadelphia schools, you were known citywide for one particular phrase, yes and. Now, some of our listeners may be familiar with that phrase as the backbone of improv comedy. How did it become so central that you operated as an educator and a leader who said yes and?
As I think back on that, I used to always say that and didn't really think much about it other than like there was always more to do in order to improve. And I think the work that we do absolutely has to be on a continuum. When I went to Philadelphia, we had like terrible budget challenges. And then when we finally got to a place of being balanced, was now, yes, we are now balanced, and here's the work that has to become important for us. Or we came back from state control to local control. And so, yes, now we're back from state control. Let's celebrate that. And here is what we have to do to continue our improvement. Seeing graduation rates increase, opening the first middle college, seeing literacy scores increase. There was always so much more to do, especially for young people who were in the communities that were most underserved and most marginalized, but yet resilient in what they wanted to accomplish for themselves. And so the yes and always became, I hear you, I agree with you, and now let's use that to propel us forward on the work that we still must accomplish on behalf of the children in the city of Philadelphia.
We imagine that sort of truism, that situation of there's always more to do, has followed you into your newish role at KnowledgeWorks. So what are you saying yes and to these days?
Yes, I haven't used that term as much now, or maybe I have and I'm just not noticing it. But I think one of the things that became really important is that as an organization, in the past, we've really been about spread. And that is spreading the knowledge of personalized and competency-based learning, the knowledge of the approach of it, with the thought that we want to get as many individuals using that strategy or believing in that approach as possible. And so, yes, we were very good at the spread part of that. And now we have to begin thinking about impact. And that impact is, can we do this in places where there have been historically underserved and marginalized yet resilient learners? And can we provide evidence that creates the very proof point that allows us to scale this at a much larger level to accelerate that transformation of the national learning system that I talked about earlier? And so the yes and has becoming more intentional and focused around our core work and proving that work in places that are representative of our country and of our young people in educational systems, and then using that evidence as a proof point to how, if implemented correctly, personalized and competency-based learning could become that mechanism for accelerating national transformation of the learning system.
Bill, on our corner of this planet, we talk often about making ourselves lucky. And we noticed that your college football coach used to say something similar, that luck is when preparation meets opportunity. So when you think about that, how is it that schools or states can make themselves lucky? How can they prepare themselves for the opportunities that the future might bring?
If we are really talking about all children, irrespective of what they bring and what they need, if we're really talking about all children, then we have to ensure that all have access, all have support, all have the ability to advance, and all have the resources that they need in order to experience that advancement. And so this notion of to create luck, you actually will not get lucky if you don't even have access to the supports they need, to the resources they need, to the approach they need. That provides them with the opportunity so that it would be more of a guarantee of luck, because we're not just preparing those who happen to have the access, but we are ensuring that every single child that is being educated anywhere in the country is having that access. And given that opportunity, then they have a greater chance for luck.
Bill, we've been doing this thing on the show called the Remaking Tomorrow Lightning Round. It's just a series of quick questions that helps our listeners get to know our guests on a little bit more personal level. And so we created a couple of lightning round questions based on your interests and your hobbies, which, as we've discovered, are music, travel, sports, and reading. So I'm just going to ask you a couple of rapid fire questions. Are you ready for this?
Sure.
All right. Book that's influenced you the most?
Paul Tufts, How Children Succeed.
That's a good one. Your one desert island album?
I would say Miles Davis.
All right, I'm going to read you a series of words, and I want you to just tell me the first word that comes to mind when you hear each. Phillies.
Pennant.
76ers.
Embiid.
Eagles.
Disappointing.
Steelers.
I prefer the Eagles.
Bill, how can people find out more about the work you're doing?
They can go on our website at knowledgeworks.org and find out about the work that we're doing. On that site, we have opportunities to join a national steering committee, opportunities to see stories of other individuals who are steep in the personalized and competency-based learning space. And it provides an opportunity to see a lot of the great forecasting work that our organization has done. And so that's, once again, KnowledgeWorks, all one word, .org.
Bill, before we go, just one more question. What's one thing that parents and educators can do today to make tomorrow a more promising place for every learner?
I think believe in the power and the ability of the learner.
Thank you so much to Dr. William Hite, President and CEO of KnowledgeWorks. You can find out more at knowledgeworks.org. Remaking Tomorrow is powered by Remake Learning. Learn more at remakelearning.org.